People are under this false idea that if they're not having sex multiple times a week, that there's something wrong with them or that there's something wrong, Jesus Christ, with their relationships. Hi guys, welcome back to my wonderful subscribers, and hello if you are new here. It's Ash, your truth-bombing fairy godmother for everything love, dating, and relationships. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different because I wanted to take a bit of a break from my breakup related content and talk about something that can apply to people who are in relationships, specifically those who are in long-term relationships. This has been something that's been brought up by several close friends of mine over the last couple of weeks. So today we're going to be talking all about sex and sexual desire in long-term relationships. But first, if you like what you're hearing and seeing today, don't forget to click that subscribe button below for new love, dating, and relationship videos every single week. And just a really quick heads up, if you're hearing some crazy background noise throughout this, I apologize. It is really stormy here today. So if you hear some banging, that's my house almost falling down. I don't know if you guys can hear this right now, but yeah, she's crazy out there today. Okay, before I get into today's topic, I want to very quickly reiterate the fact that I am in no way a psychological professional. I'm not a sex or relationship therapist. My opinions are purely based off of my own personal experiences, what I know of other people's experiences, and then of course things that I've learned and picked up from actual relationship and sex therapists whom I greatly admire. So what I will be discussing and saying today should certainly not be used in lieu of actual professional advice from an expert. And because of that, I'm not going to be giving any overly specific tips in terms of what you should or shouldn't do within your relationship when it comes to sex. But what I will be discussing are what I believe to be some truths when it comes to sex and long-term relationships, and also some concepts and mistruths about sex that I think are greatly beneficial to be aware of, and things that I wish that I knew a very, very long time ago. So without any further delay, let's talk about sex. One of the biggest questions I get asked by my close friends, specifically the ones who are in long-term relationships or even marriages, is how often do you and Luke have sex? And the reason that people ask this is because they're usually trying to get some type of validation or reassurance that what they're doing or how often they're doing it is okay and normal. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, is that there is no such thing as normal. There is no golden ideal when it comes to the frequency of sex in a relationship. Absolutely everyone is different, and what will be normal or standard for one couple will be entirely different for the next. I've talked about Dr. Lauren Fogel Mercy on this channel before. She's a fantastic sex and relationship therapist, and she has a really good Instagram full of such good information and resources. But I want to share one of her posts with you guys that just really drives home the point that normal does not exist. You could be having sex multiple times a week, once a month, once every few months, once a year. It could all be considered normal. So long as it works for you and your partner, that is what ultimately matters. But thanks to all the absolutely nonsense, inaccurate Hollywood depictions of love and romance, and specifically sex within those relationships, people are under this false idea that if they're not having sex multiple times a week, that there's something wrong with them or that there's something wrong, Jesus Christ, with their relationships. And that is the point of today's video, to really reassure you that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you and there is nothing wrong with your relationship. Even if sex has become a source of conflict within your relationship, or one person feels like their needs aren't being met as much as they would like, there is still nothing wrong with you or your relationship. This is extremely common and will very likely occur at some point within nearly all long-term relationships. It doesn't mean that you're doomed. It doesn't mean that, your relationship can't be salvaged. This can very successfully be worked through. It just means that some additional communication likely needs to happen, and this is where assistance from an actual sex therapist can be very helpful. But even without the aid of a professional, what you can do right here, right now, is get rid of the notion that there is something wrong with you for not having or even wanting as much sex with your partner as you once did, which is where one of the most groundbreaking concepts I have ever been introduced to when it comes to sex, and something that I wish that I knew much earlier on in my life, which is that there are two main types of desire. Something called spontaneous desire and something called responsive desire. I'll go ahead and insert another one of Dr. Lauren's Instagram posts here because it illustrates these two types of desire really well and clearly. But in essence, spontaneous desire, as the name suggests, is when you spontaneously become aroused or have a sudden desire for your partner sexually. Whereas responsive desire is when you essentially need to be already engaging or doing something sexually relevant in order to have a desire for sex. So you experience desire in response to something that is already occurring. Now, the reason why knowing about these two types of desire is so important is because for most people, spontaneous desire is something that is primarily experienced at the beginning of a relationship. Not always, of course. There are still people who experience spontaneous desire even after years and years of being with someone. But for a lot of people, myself included, that is simply not the case. For many people and couples, once that honeymoon phase ends and they settle into more relaxed, everyday life together, it's much less common to experience those exciting, sudden, primal urges to have sex with your partner. Instead, they'll transition into primarily responsive desire, in which they won't really be in the mood until they're already doing something that is sexually relevant. And as a result, the frequency of sex will naturally decrease when it takes sexually relevant stimuli or experiences in order to spark that fire. I can't tell you how often I hear people, primarily women, say things like, I just don't want to rip my partner's clothes off anymore. I never feel like initiating sex, but once we're actually doing it, it's great and I enjoy it. And they think that this lack or decrease or complete absence of spontaneous desire means that there's something wrong, or perhaps they just don't love their significant others enough anymore. And this could not be further from the truth. Experiencing that overwhelming spontaneous desire to rip your partner's clothes off when you've likely done so thousands of times before is just not a realistic expectation. Sex and sexual desire absolutely changes in long-term relationships, and this is a normal, healthy evolution for most of us. And if you're like me, who is really turned on by mystery and not really knowing someone and that whole will they, won't they dynamic, then this will likely be very true for you too. It doesn't mean that the sex can't be great, but experience spontaneous desire for someone that you really know like the back of your hand is just not going to be your norm. And this is where making it a priority to plan time together as a couple in a sensual, physically intimate way can become a necessity, because without intentionally creating those sexually relevant environments, sex will rarely happen on its own. So my very general advice for those of you who are concerned over your lack of sexual desire towards your partner within your long-term relationship is to remove the spontaneous desire expectation or benchmark. Despite what society likes to tell us, you have to let go of the notion that sex needs to be a spur of the moment thing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you for transitioning to the more responsive desire experience and for needing to schedule in time as a couple to really prioritize that physical closeness and intimacy in order for you to create that more sexually relevant environment. Even if you're not experiencing responsive desire either, that's okay too. There will absolutely be times within nearly all long-term relationships, specifically during big transition periods or times of stress, that neither types of desire will be present. And you only entrench yourself further into this lack of desire when you put pressure on yourself to be feeling different than you are. See if you can completely let go of the expectation that you should want sex. See if you can stop judging yourself for not wanting it right now. It is amazing what can happen when we stop putting pressure on ourselves and stop judging ourselves to be feeling differently than we are. And this is especially true when it comes to sex and desire. Sex and desire are highly complex subjects, and there's so much more I can say about all this stuff. I'm reading a ton of books right now about this topic because I find it so interesting and fascinating. But I also find it so frustrating that there is such limited mainstream information depicting what happy, healthy sex lives within long-term relationships can actually look like, and specifically the fact that such a wide range of experiences can be perfectly normal and okay. I absolutely plan on doing more videos about this, so if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comment section down below. I always do my best to get back to all of you guys, but I certainly read all of my comments, so I would love to hear your opinions on all of this. But until next time, see you next week.